Rejoice, my spider nuts. That's exactly what I say every time I get into the shower. This is my review that has actually been rather anticipated for so many people. I've actually gotten quite a handful of comments asking when am I doing this review, and I know I've been putting it up for a while. I did the Hulk Classic review from the GameCube at that point, and then I moved on to some other things, tried to get some other projects and videos done, and then I had WonderCon and so on and so forth. Now that I have the time, and before it gets any busier with the new quarter that I'm starting over at school, I wanna get my review for this game done, and it is none other than what an awful lot of people argue could be the best Spider-Man game to date until Insomniac decides to take on the championship title away from this game, and it is none other than Activision and Treyarch's movie tie-in, Spider-Man 2. After the record-breaking success of the first movie, it was bound to happen that we were going to get a sequel, much less a trilogy of Spider-Man films from producers Avi Arad, Lara Ziskin, and all the people, Grant Curtis, and of course Sony, overlooking the entire project directed by Sam Raimi. And of course, with those movies will come movie tying games, as well as various other licensing, merchandising, and all the sort of things that came in the cereal boxes and in the cell phone plans, yada yada yada. But this time, Treyarch decided to look at the aspect of creating a Spider-Man game and decided to tweak it a little bit, especially since they probably had a certain ambitious goal in mind for a Spider-Man game, but because of time restraints, I almost feel like they had to put off what they considered to be a definitive Spider-Man game and put it into the sequel, because we only got a 2-year gap between the first game and the second game, so I feel like something as rather different and unique of an approach as it was couldn't have happened in just 2 years. I feel like there was some creative mind within Treyarch that said, you know what, if we gotta go big with the sequel just like they did with the movie, then we gotta do it with the second game. It's still Treyarch, there's still some assets being used, and there's still this weird feeling of how they're trying to be a little bit different from the movie while at the same time being in conjecture with the movie. So there's a slight balance there of what Treyarch is trying to do, and they kept that in tune here with Spider-Man 2. And when it first came out, so many people were pleasantly surprised with the Spider-Man 2 game. But here we are, nearly 14 years later. Does it exactly hold up as everybody praises it to be? So as I said, this is a movie tie-in game, and it's going to take material from the movie and kind of translate it into video game form, and you see that in certain aspects of the game, whether it be related to the gameplay or related to the story or to the presentation aesthetics of the game. And similar to the first game, I want to say about a third of the game is actually adapted material from the movie that doesn't necessarily does a great job of really filling in the plot elements of the movie as well as the movie did. And that's a similar thing that I have to say about the first game, where certain things that would have been properly developed from the movie are not exactly translated very well here in the game, because they're really busy on the gameplay aspect of playing as Spider-Man and going through the city as Spider-Man and doing Spidey things, that when certain characters do a certain thing within the story that's related to the movie, whether it be Peter having a meeting with Otto Octavius, or Otto Octavius' motives for becoming Doc Ock, or Harry Osborn's motivation to kill Spider-Man after the events of the first movie.
I know you think Spider-Man killed your dad.
He did kill my dad. Someday I'll get him for it too. You tell him that next time you see him.
Yeah,
Jesus,
well,
mood swings much?
Hey,
MJ didn't exactly do anything to help. It just doesn't hit home as much as the movie did. But they still get some points for trying, because ever so often there is a golden moment that any other development studio would have completely overlooked or just cut out of the game, and yet they still kept it in here. Little interactions between Otto Octavius and Peter early on in the game are a little cool to kind of look at, even though they get kind of interrupted by other things that are happening within the game, because we got to keep it a video game and we got to make sure that the pacing is tight so that nothing feels too bogged down with really metaphysical stuff. But some of the shining moments that really do a good job at taking the theme of Spider-Man 2 about balancing a normal life with a superhero life is whenever Peter's not exactly in a cutscene with another character or he's doing anything with any other person, he's actually literally just roaming around the city, and he has like these little introspective monologues within his head that we get to hear as players.
Man, that cake was good. Stuffed. I'd better burn off some calories or I won't fit in my costume anymore.
And it's these little lines of dialogue that are actually not that bad, that I hear and I go, wow, you're actually tackling some really deep stuff here, and you're just a movie time video game. You shouldn't be doing this. And I guess one of the things that kind of helps that is that Tobey Maguire is actually a little better here in the second game than he was in the first one. He's not phoning it in as much, especially when some of the material does deviate away from the movie and does some different stuff. It's almost like he took a page of what Willem Dafoe was kind of doing with the first game, and then he kind of made certain things his own, where I'm like, wow, I actually felt some energy behind that line delivery. For the most part, ever so often he kind of falters, he kind of phones it in. Sometimes it almost sounds like he or some other actors within the making of this game sound like they recorded their lines over a phone, like a phone line or something. They sound kind of echoey like this, and I'm like, did you record this in your kitchen or something?
Peter, I'm so happy you made it.
It's great to see you too.
But overall, he's good, but keeping a level of consistency is key to being a great voice actor. And nobody does it better than the man himself, the groovy man himself, Bruce Campbell, returning as the tutorial guide who helps you out throughout the city, especially early on in the game where he's giving you pointers on how to really learn the mechanics, whether it be with the combat or the swinging, and also various little tips spread out throughout the city that you get to interact with, where Bruce Campbell's just nailing it and killing it with the comedy while at the same time informing you of very vital things to do around the city and how to work the mechanics properly. And ever so often, you gotta give the man being a great talent with his timing and with his improv, because there's certain things that you can clearly see the text of what he's supposed to say up on the screen, but then he throws in one or two things that are clearly not there that he for sure must have ad-libbed, and they're golden.
Okay, here's a little piece of advice. Hang on, I need to get that. Hello? Oh, hey, baby. Well, no, I haven't forgotten. No? Well, listen, baby, it's not like that. Look, I'll have to get back to you later. This might be a while. Well, no one, baby. No, don't worry about it. Yeah, tell me about it. See, listen, later tonight...
Now, Tobey and Bruce, however, make up half of the all-star cast that makes up the game. We also got Kirsten Dunst and Alfred Molina playing their respective characters from the movie here, and I gotta be honest, even though Alfred Molina's doing a good job as Otto Octavius, and Kirsten Dunst is, she's Mary Jane, I just never, having replayed the game now after all these years, I just don't think that they were 100% necessary to really be in this game. I gotta be honest, because of how busy the game is with being a video game, their characters are not in the game as they were in their movies based on the ratio of how much screen time they have. You know what I'm saying? That's a 2-hour movie. They're in the majority of it. Here they're in the game for about an hour or so each. But we're dealing with a 7-hour game, so when they're barely in the game, you kind of wonder to yourself, was it really necessary to spend all this money getting Kirsten Dunst and Alfred Molina to reprise their roles? Because they didn't do what Bruce Campbell and Tobey Maguire were able to do, which is to add a new layer of dimension to their character. So it's kind of like, well, you really could have gotten anybody. So since you can't take 100% of the movie drama over to the video game, then you got to do your job as a developer to make sure that you got content to really extrapolate from. And of course, they take stuff from the comics because Spider-Man is just ripe to being able to do that with. And so you take some characters from the comics such as Rhino and Mysterio, and you throw them in here and there within the story that actually does a good balance of interweaving them with some material that's actually happening from the movie. So I was like, okay, this is actually rather well paced. But to be honest, to me, the biggest scene stealer and one of the very thankful additions to the movie game that's actually from the comics that makes me think, why wasn't this in the movie, was actually Black Cat. She plays a very strong supporting role in the story of this game, and she wasn't even in the movie. And I gotta be honest, I feel like she does her part better than Mary Jane or even Doc Ock did in this game, because she not only is a really good, well-rounded version of that character from the comics, down to the point where it makes me question as to why Peter goes after Mary Jane, where he has Black Cat standing right in front of her.
Hey, I can be nice. I don't always bite. Unless you want me to.
Hey.
Come on now. Don't fall behind.
My codpiece would have burst. But it's her inclusion in the story that has Peter tackling certain things that he didn't in the movie, especially things regarding the Daily Bugle. And it was cool to see that there was a new little dynamic there that you weren't getting from the movie, and that's something that I always feel like a movie tie-in game or a novelization or something that is based on the movie of whatever the hot movie is coming out at the time should really do, because it should expand. It should give me a reason for why I'm spending my hard-earned money on this thing, whereas I could have just checked out the movie. And this is a really good example of doing that right. And I also like what they did with the look of these characters from the comics and kind of gave them a slightly more realistic upgrade. Like, for example, Mysterio, he has a different design to him that is different from the one that you were used to in the comics, but still kind of faithful. And you have little things going on right there with those characters, as well as the characters you got from the movie. And this kind of leads as to what I felt about the visuals, which is that it's not exactly a far leap from what we got in Spider-Man 1, because keep in mind there was only a 2-year gap, so the visual integrity is not exactly going to be leaps and bounds better. We're not talking standard definition to high definition, at least not yet. We were on the cusp of that, but that didn't exactly happen. However, I do feel like the visuals, even 14 years later, I have to admit they were a slight improvement over the first game. They're less blurred, they're a little bit sharper, they're a little bit more pristine and cleaned up. For the most part, ever so often there's maybe a little bit of clipping going on throughout the city, especially when you're going from very high up distances to low distances. But at least the in-game models of all these characters and everything that's going on within the city is sharp and very in tune, and it feels like you're a little bit more immersive with these character models. More so than you are during the handful of CG cutscenes spread out throughout the game, which I gotta be honest, I think now looking back at them, they're rather terrible, because for one thing, they look very grainy, very dark. You can barely see any kind of very intricate detail within the backgrounds that these people probably painstakingly put into the backgrounds animating these things, and then somebody like a DP, a cinematographer, whatever, said, oh yeah, we gotta make it murky so that it looks kind of realistic or whatever. And I'm like, why do that? Why do you gotta do that? Why do you gotta turn this work? And more to the point would have to be some of these character models they used for some of these characters in the CG cutscenes, because they're god awful. They're the stuff of nightmares.
I'm sorry I didn't tell you, MJ.
Ugh.
I wanted to.
How does that look like
I even
Tobey
tried a couple
Maguire?
of times, but
I think a part of me always knew.
I can't be with you.
Oh.
To be fair to you, I was selfish to ask you.
What's wrong with his face? You look at those models, and then you look at the models they used in-game, and sure, one might look technically realistic, more realistic than the other ones, but to be honest, when it comes to design integrity and being faithful to how they look like in the movie, or how they will look like in a movie if they were to have been there, which looks better? Honestly, yeah, I don't know what they were thinking with the CG cutscenes. I prefer the ones from the first game more so than the ones here, but at least I'm glad to see that the majority of the game's cutscenes and cinematics take place in-game. And the music still keeps that tone of wanting to be its own thing, while at the same time also having like little beats and little melodies kind of from the movie, but not exactly Danny Elfman's score. But I will admit, it kind of similar to how I felt about the graphics. The sound mixing as well as the music for this game is a little bit more orchestral and very traditional, as opposed to how super edgy and super 2000s the first game's score kind of felt, with all of its, you know, little like that. Ever so often there's a little techno vibe going on within this game, but it's mostly akin to characters from the comics that kind of fit it. But some standout pieces kind of come from either Peter swinging around, or whenever you have to chase Black Cat. That's a very funky groove. God, more of them. However, not much has changed from the voice acting. I have mentioned, I believe, with the first game that some voice acting can be either kind of bad or others could be a little bit over the top, that it's so good it's bad. Here, it's kind of the same, except I feel like here it feels like its own character. It feels like it's fit within its world, where I'm like, okay, I guess I gotta accept that some of these people around New York City, or even some of these villains that you fight, are gonna be a little over the top or very traditional in the sense where the way they look is how they're gonna sound. So for example, when you got Rhino, he's obviously gonna be talking about he's gonna make you cry for your mama. And of course, he's played by John Maggio, so you can kind of picture in your mind right now, or at least listen in your mind, how he's gonna sound. And ever so often, these pedestrians that you kind of interact with in New York City have me cracking the fuck up. I don't remember them being like this when I first played the game, because some people sound like your traditional New Yorkers, and then others sound like they're just leaning into that microphone trying to give the best performance, and I'm like, yeesh, that's cheesy as hell. But overall, there's a level of charm and wit to how cheesy these voices sound that they just won me over, and I kept wanting to interact with these characters, especially whoever female character within New York City was being voiced by Niecy Nash. Niecy Nash, if you guys don't know her, I'll put an image of her right here, right now. She's obviously, you can kind of recognize her right now. She's from Reno 911, has various other movies and TV shows. And once you pop in this game and you go around New York City, you're instantly going to be able to listen to her, because her voice is very recognizable and unforgettable. And you're going to instantly tell who she's voicing, and you're going to be like, yep, that's definitely her.
The cops are chasing somebody, boy. Can't you do something?
Couldn't animate the head? Okay. Boy, don't call me boy. Now, I mentioned our titular character. I mentioned Mary Jane, Doc Ock, even Bruce Campbell, who is the disembodied voice leading us down the right path, as well as our various inhabitants of the city that are constantly talking to us and giving us the things to do. But I'm overlooking a very pivotal character that's essential to the plot, is essential to the design of the game, and is essential to the overall production that Treyarch had in store for them. And that is New York City. Much like how residents of the city itself here in real life, here in the real world, consider New York City to be like the living, breathing heart of that state, nay, even the country, so it is for this game. Because one of the things that everybody remembers about Spider-Man 2 is that this is the first game, the first Spider-Man game, where you get to travel from the towering heights of the Chrysler Building or the Empire State Building down to the very low streets of Soho or the Financial District, and all within real time. You get to explore the entire Manhattan Island, as well as even the Liberty Island, where the Statue of Liberty is at, and even Roosevelt Island, and the bridge that connects it all together. And for Spider-Man 2 to have undertaken such a daunting ability back in 2004, in a movie tie-in game no less, was very surprising for so many people. And I remember it being one of the highlights of figuring out when I first popped in the game and thought to myself, like, okay, we're starting off in the buildings. I jumped off. Wait, I'm gonna die. Wait, I didn't die. My health suffered a little, but I'm on the ground. There's a car. There's people. What madness is this? Spider-Man, whose main home is New York City and is fully connected to New York City, is actually immersed within New York City in a video game, and you feel immersed right there with him, where I can honestly say that even though I've never physically in real life ever been to New York, I feel like I have with this game. And it may not have been super 100% accurate with each and every single little building was put in the right place as in the real Manhattan Island, but I feel like they got pretty fucking close with this representation of New York City, with the buildings and the look and the lighting textures, and how it over time it transitions from night to day, and you get to see the city kind of light up just like it would in real life, and you actually see it kind of breathe as you would through the eyes of Spider-Man, going through New York City and interacting with the people, talking to them, as well as going up on the highest building. And ever so often there's also a couple of buildings that you actually get to go inside of. Now unfortunately there's nothing really much to do within these buildings. That just tickles your exploring fancy, but other than that there's not much really to them. it's more about going from one level of the city to another and knowing that you can do that in real time without any kind of loading times, without any kind of transitionings or hidden loading screens or anything like that. You get to do that while at the same time fucking swinging as Spider-Man with a brand new swing mechanic that so many people were actually complaining from the first game, and I thought that it was okay, but it could have been fully developed and much more explored even back then when I was only 11, 12 years old playing the damn game. And now my wishes, both as a 13-year-old when I first played this game and as a 27-year-old now replaying the game all these years, gets really, really tremendously satisfied, because there's nothing much more satisfying or addictive than using the new swinging mechanics and the new swinging system here in Spider-Man 2 with a very immersive city such as this, where they actually took the concept of swinging and applied it to the buttons on the controller, where you actually have to shoot a web, swing across it, let go, and shoot another one, rather than just hold down one button and he just routinely swings from one point to another without any kind of fluidity or momentum or feeling like you're actually interacting with the webbing and interacting with the swinging and a process of movement through the city. You get to do that now finally in Spider-Man 2, where you get to swing from one piece of web to another, and it kind of makes you think, because for one aspect it can kill Spider-Man if you kind of mess up, but over time you learn the mechanics, you get the motion of it, and you find yourself kind of addicted where you're not even paying attention to the main story or the quests you have to do or the tasks. You're swinging from the city, just exploring, going from rooftop to rooftop, and thinking to yourself, I'm Spider-Man. I'm the Spider-Man. And I just climbed to the top of the Chrysler building. And now I'm about to jump off and pray to God that this web catches me. It's one thing to swing around as Spidey, but can you also fight like Spidey with Spider-Man 2? Is it as refined as the swinging has been this time around? Kind of yes and no. There's some similar moves that you might recognize from the first game, like when he shoots web and that kind of traps the enemy in the webbing so that then you can take care of him, as well as his punching mechanics. But the overall combat system has been pulled back somewhat, and it has a little bit of a learning curve where there's not one button that does all the punches and then one button does all the kicking and one button does all the web attacks. Now it's kind of like, okay, you just got the punches and then you got the counter move with the X button or the far button, and then you can kind of chain all these things together along with the webbing to kind of pull off some moves. But unlike with the first game, you can't do the moves right off the bat, even after acquiring the combos spread out throughout the city. You have to go actively buy them and also kind of learn them as you go along, because within the city, there's these stores where you get to buy upgrades for both your combat moves and your swinging mechanics. So these two facets of playing as Spider-Man get upgraded over time as you gain points from the experience that you gain as Spider-Man, both from the story modes as well as the various other side quests that you get to do around the city. And this kind of improves the experience of playing as Spider-Man, whether it be fighting goons out on the street or just swinging from one building to another. It gets kind of better. It really does get better as the game progresses, and that's something that a game should challenge you as Spider-Man. It's where, yeah, you start off, you learn the swinging mechanic, and you're having fun with it, but over time you think to yourself, I wish I could go a little bit faster. Oh, you want to go faster? Okay. Get some points, go to the store, you can buy the upgrade, and then you'll end up going faster. You want to be able to slingshot between two webs? You can do that. You just got to go buy the upgrade and then learn how to do it. And that's what games should do when you're put in the position of a superhero, where it makes you feel kind of badass, but then over time you think that level of badass is just the norm. Okay, well then we gotta push it. And Treyarch pushed themselves with the mechanics. And over time you learn how to web up two dudes at the same time. Or you pull off this helicopter type move with your legs where you can take out so many enemies at a time that you wish you had at the beginning of the game. But over time you'll learn to kind of respect the acquiring of this new move with the points you got. And all these points that I'm talking about to buy these upgrades, you mainly earn them from the story missions that you go from chapter to chapter completing. But on the side, the city is riddled with so many citizens constantly asking you to either rescue this person that's about to fall, or this person needs to go to the hospital, you need to take care of them, or you need to foil a robbery or take care of an armored car, or somebody's speeding down the road and you need to stop their car. So many other tasks, and some other ones that are kind of spontaneous and on the off the cuff, where some person just made off with somebody's purse and you gotta go catch them, and it's a little bit time sensitive, but at least it gets the urgent feeling of being a superhero, where you have to go take care of this random crime because random crime happens, and they put it here in this game. And then some fucking kid loses his balloon.
Be good now.
What do we say?
I'll never let my balloony go again.
You were supposed to say thank you, you little shit. God damn it. He just abandoned his child. And it must be your job to retrieve the goddamn balloon. And if those things aren't enough for you to do as Spider-Man, then you also got some time challenges that you get to interact with throughout the city, as well as these little like coins or tokens that you can kind of collect, that there's literally hundreds of them littered throughout the entire city. And then, without going into spoilers in case you just have never played this game, hence you're watching my review, there's actually some missions you can do throughout the city that aren't exactly put right there in front of your face, whether it be in the map or otherwise, like doing the pizza jobs that you guys obviously love to do based on the constant memes we've received ever since the concept of meme was born, and somebody had to put it out there, Spider-Man 2, the pizza meme, because that's just, it's great. It's great comedy writing. And along with it came the pizza missions you get here in this game, with various other different little things that you can kind of do on the side for other people involved in Peter's life. I'll just leave it at that. And that also accumulates your points that you can then spend in the upgrade store. Now, the only little drawback that I kind of rediscovered, or kind of discovered in and of itself here after playing the game for the first time in all these years, is that when you move from chapter to chapter, you can only do so if you acquire a certain amount of points. It starts off a little easy with only like 2,000 points required to move on to the next one, but then over time it goes to 3,000, and then it goes to 4,000, and after a while you'll find yourself a little short to where getting these points kind of pads out the story mode, and you need to get these amount of points, and it feels like should have been a little optional in terms of these points. You don't have to get them, but it will make not only the game a little easier, but it also make it feel much more badass, and you'll be like the ultimate superhero. I feel like they could have kept that whole momentum of feeling like, making you feel like a badass more so, and kind of improved upon it, rather than padding out the game saying you need to get 4,000 points. 4,000? Shit, I'm gonna have to do that on my own time, not on a Let's Play. And in hindsight, it also ends up making these side quests that you have to do with the citizens asking you for help just a little repetitive, where every so often you're gonna interact with the same person that looks like the same character model that you did 15 minutes ago, and who knows, they might end up giving you the same exact task where you have to go and save somebody from falling, or you have to stop this vehicle. It's up to you whether or not you want to vary it from task to task, but overall, after a while, especially after you beat the game, you're gonna look back at these side quests and go, I'm fine. I think I'm just going to swing around the city for a couple more hours. And how often are you going to be able to say that about a movie tie-in game that was able to innovate with the mechanics that it did from the first game, along with various other facets that it makes you think, how can they have pulled this off in just 2 years? I have my theories, but that's not exactly going to help the fact that this is a game that, sure, I've had my fill with now after doing my review and playing it for said review, but I would not exactly rule out the possibility that at some point, maybe next year, after I get a shit ton of these much more modern games done from the PS4, the Nintendo Switch, or Xbox, I jump back onto the GameCube, load Spider-Man 2 back up, and just swing across the city and fill in the tights and empower myself with the duties of being Spider-Man once more. And all from a movie tie-in game is the one thing that I just can't, after all these years, completely fathom. A movie tie-in game that I will admit is not exactly flawless. Like I mentioned, it does have its qualms, whether it be ones that I initially saw when I first played the game all those years ago, or some of the ones that I saw recently replaying the game that don't exactly hold up as much as they might have for some people. But to me, the most important part of this game, which is the city of New York, the swinging mechanics, and the way it's able to improve on some of the things from the first game, still in fact do. And for that, I'm going to be giving Spider-Man 2 from 2004, the movie tie-in game, a very high 8 out of 10. And I gotta dare say that I feel like even after replaying the game, this is still somewhat of a standard for what Insomniac is going to have to live up to, especially with the mechanics of the swinging and the fighting and the way of feeling truly like Spider-Man, and how they're going to have to live up to those standards has yet to be seen, but here's to hoping that they do an excellent job, maybe I dare say even better. But I swear to God, Insomniac, if Peter's not delivering pizzas in this new game, you're not gonna have a problem. So I'm super eager to hear from you guys. What are your guys' fondest memories of playing Spider-Man 2? Whether it be on the GameCube like I did, or on the PlayStation 2, or even on the Xbox back in 2002. Please post your comments down below with all of your guys' fondest experiences and memories playing the game. What do you remember the most about it? What's like the first image or sound that comes to mind when you think of the Spider-Man 2 movie video game? Post them down below. Make sure you hit the like and share button to support this video. It's a very important review for me because this is one of my favorite games, I dare say, and doing this review was an awful lot of fun. Please show the love, guys, by hitting the like and share button down below, and of course subscribe for more reviews, because even though I don't currently own them, I am somewhat enticed to continue this line of reviews with the next one of the bunch. Yeah, Spider-Man 3. I don't own it, but I can probably hunt it down pre-owned from a GameStop somewhere. God be with me. As well as the one that I missed out on and I'm eager to play, Ultimate Spider-Man. You guys want to see reviews on those? Make sure to hit the support video. If there was a support button, that would help out a lot. But the subscribe button down below and show your support. And if you managed to stick around until the end of this video, you guys would have noticed that you saw some Let's Play footage there of the Spider-Man 2 video game. That's because I actually captured the entirety of the game with my commentary on my computer here, and I'm uploading it piece by piece on my twitch.tv channel. So please check out my Twitch, twitch.tv/DarkSpiderDavid, and you can check out various Let's Plays there. I got a few of, actually I got the entirety of the first Spider-Man game. I'm in the process of maybe getting the Hulk video game up there with my Let's Plays, as well as, of course, like I mentioned, Spider-Man 2 and various others coming in the future. So be sure to follow me on there, and that really about does it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care. This debuted back in 2003 when it was becoming really hot with the whole intellectual property of not just Spider-Man, but pretty much anything that's Marvel related for a very key demographic centered around young teens. And what better network to put this thing on than on the network that is very much aimed at young teens, MTV.
Best dressed? Please, the girls got hips like snack trays.